Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Striation 6 podcast. I am your host, Sam Chada. I am the owner of Striation 6. And as it is with everything I do in the exercise profession, I am bringing you this podcast with the hopes of helping you feel, function, look, and live better through exercise. And I'm very happy to be recording this today. My apologies, first of all, for the long stint between last episode and this episode. This will be the fourth and final episode of our exercise versus series. We started off with episode one of just, a particular view on exercise. And if you haven't listened to that, I would encourage you to listen to it to have more of a basis for, I guess it's not really a conversation because it's just me talking, but for the for the talk that I'm going to do today. Then after that, we did exercise versus play and activity. And then we did exercise versus practice and training. And today we're going to conclude with exercise versus competition and labor. And it's interesting because competition and labor have no real link to one another. Like play and activity are sort of linked together in a direct way. Practice and training, even just in how we use them in a sort of common speech, are fairly linked together. But it's like competition and labor, they're not really linked. In my view, they are in a particular way that I'll get to. But about the absence between episodes, just quickly here, my time was just taken over by projects that needed my attention, mostly our new website that's coming up. So that's kind of exciting. Our new Striation 6 website that's coming up. I've been creatively enrolled in that and tactically enrolled in it. So it's taken up a lot of time. But here we are with part four of our exercise versus series. And as I said, this episode is about exercise versus competition and labor. And what's interesting about talking about exercise versus competition and labor and sort of isolating competition and labor as a pair of things that we could elect to do with our bodies or would have to do with our bodies in some cases is that as a pair, they're not tied together as the other two pairs in parts two and three of this series were linked. They're certainly not related in terms of their intent or the nature of them. Though they could be fabricated that way, you could picture in a labor situation two rather competitive people seeing who can do more work faster, that sort of thing. That said, though, there is until competition is electively sort of brought into a labor situation or competition in a competition, a participant is seen this is more like labor than anything else. The two aren't necessarily related, although we um I think they are related in more ways than not. In the last episode, we talked about practice and training. And one way you could look at a relationship or a similarity between competition and labor is that more often than not, labor and competitions are expressions of physical effort um, based on what we exercise, play, practice, and train for. Um, in one particular lens, that I have to give full credit here to Tom Purvis and the resistance training specialist program for which, excuse me, not for whom, for which I am an instructor at this point. But this is where I learned this. Labor and competition are in some sense, ultimate expressions of what the RTS program would call external performance efforts. So if we zoom all the way back, and again, if you haven't listened to episode one and you are interested in getting a full picture of what I'm trying to say in this series, I would encourage you to listen to episode one. If we look at exercise, it's nearly based on the view that I gave of it. Exercise is nearly wholly, if not wholly, internal performance based, wherein the prioritization of effort and intention is given to internal bodily or muscular function. And there's virtually no difference in saying bodily function and muscular function when we're talking about exercise. Play is pretty external, but it's not serious. It's more fun and social in nature. It's not intentionally strenuous on the body as physical competition and physical labor tend to be. At an adult level, when we're talking about play, it's more exploratory. We're kind of just, tiptoeing into new ground, having some fun, maybe hanging out with some cool people. When we talk about practice, this is where things start to get a little more serious, and we integrate explorations from play with physical skill practice in order to advance the skill sets in lower stress, lower resistance environments. There's a mindfulness aspect to this, which I would consider more internal performance based, where we're trying to get better at whatever physical skill it is that we're trying to practice. But we're not but the practice efforts are not intended to be particularly strenuous. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, yeah, my men's league hockey or basketball practice, they can be kind of strenuous. Like, well, because you're calling it practice. But when we're getting into that sort of thing, really what we're talking about, at least in my view, like I said, is, by the way, I'm going to say in my view a lot during this episode, because I do want to make it clear that these are my views. I am not intending to put this view out there as a sort of superlative thing. I hope you can relate to my view. I'd love to discuss this view with you. And by the way, if you can show me where I'm wrong on any of this stuff, or where I missed something, or confirm that you think I have made some good points about something, let me know. Email me, sam@striation6.com. If you're a member of my gym here, stop me and let me know, or leave a comment here on Spotify or on YouTube, wherever you're taking in this podcast. But when we're looking into, like I said, when we're looking into mindfulness, we're trying to get better when we practice, but there's no good intent to be strenuous. When we get into training, this is where more resistance or difficulty is added into the situation. It's trying to make the situation a little more real life. And the more we get along this scale of making things more real life, what that really means is that we're considering the task, the outcome of the physical effort, more than we're actually considering the ability of our physical body. The ability of our physical body. At a certain point, when we're thinking about the task needs to be done. I almost said be get done. It's like some old English thing there, but the task needs to get done, whether it's healthy for you or not, whether it's painful for you or not, whether it's strenuous for you or not. And anyone who's ever really competed, or anyone who's ever really trained hard, or anyone who's ever really labored, especially if they're laboring for a reason that's sort of greater than themselves, and we'll get to that, knows that the task has to get done, whether your health is impeded on or not. And this is where I think we run into a situation where this stuff, these things that impede on our health, can no longer be recognized as exercise in any way, shape, or form. As far as I'm concerned, if what you are doing is not improving your physical health, or if it is doing more to detract from your physical health than it is to add to it, because we can't really silo these things. They could have two things going on at once. It's no longer exercise. And we don't have to get to the competition and labor thing. You could be someone who's training to do a marathon. And if you run into a knee injury on your way to training for the marathon, and you run through that knee injury, and I say this with no judgment, you might be simultaneously improving your cardiorespiratory fitness, all the while shredding that knee. And while I would applaud you for having a goal and pursuing it, and while I would say there's probably some good health benefits to improving your cardiovascular fitness, that is all shortchanged as exercise, in my view, by the shredding of the knee. So it's no longer exercise, it's training. All right. And when you actually do the run, it's no longer exercise. When you run the Sporting Life Marathon, or the Boston, or the New York, or whatever it might be, whatever may have you, it's no longer anything but competition, and your health is out the window if that knee continues to get worse or doesn't start to get better. So this is where I think it's important to make some distinctions between things here. And while what you do with your body comes back to a combination of one, personal choice, and what you're ready and wanting to take on, combined with what you're able to do at any given time, when we're talking turkey, when we're talking truthfully about what it is you're doing with your body, I think there needs to be more honest conversation about what's healthy versus not healthy, or what's healthy versus what's improving a really particular form of fitness. And that's maybe a topic for another podcast. So when we arrive at competition and labor, what we're doing is we're really putting our health in the back seat. Okay. Uh, Competition and labor put all of the physical, cognitive, and psychological assets you've accumulated through your other efforts, that play, that practice, that activity, that training. It puts it all to the test of whether or not a particular task can get done. And please note, when I do speak about the labor part of this episode, this gets a bit personal to me, and I'll speak to this. So if I speak in a more emotional way about it than I typically do speak about these sorts of topics, please excuse me. Like I said, it is very personal to me, and I wanted to let you know in advance. So that's a lot of preamble. I think what might be prudent to do here is just like I did in episodes 2 and 3, is review my view of exercise. So we have something to hold this stuff up against. Now, you may have noticed, if you have been listening to this series or to this podcast, as we got what I would call further away from exercise, further away from an internal performance view towards more of an external performance view. And it's not black or white. It is a continuum. Okay. It's not binary. This is a continuum. And yes, anything you might be doing in the gym or with your local adult league team, or what your kids might be doing in their physical efforts, there is a continuum. In one sports team practice, you might exercise, play, practice, and train all in the same hour. And it's not about calling it out and saying, oh, that's no longer exercise, that's play, or oh, that's no longer exercise, that's training. It's about just sort of having a framework to help you decide what's most appropriate to do with your body. So let's just quickly review my view of exercise here. So in my view, exercise is, and I'll go through this quicker than I have in the previous episodes, a deliberate, voluntary, and primarily physical effort on the part of an individual with a particular intention to cause or prevent a specific movement or series of movements in a specific manner or orchestration in the body of that individual against an also specifically applied resistance in a sufficient amount, with the aim of improving a given number of internal bodily functions and therein producing better health in the individual. So in parentheses, there's a bias. If you're not improving health, you're not exercising. And I think that's integral to this kind of conversation, including but not limited to muscular output, muscular growth, active available joint mobility, movement orchestration under certain conditions, and cardiorespiratory function that is divorced to the greatest extent possible from the performance of outcomes, tasks, and events that would or could occur outside of the body of the individual. So as it was in episodes 1, 2, and 3, that is a big mouthful. Please feel free to listen once again to the earlier episodes in this series if you'd like to go into this more thoroughly. This is the entire content of episode 1. So for a refresher or I don't know, a first timer, go back to episode 1. All right. And again, let me know what you think. I'd love to know what you hear about this. So going from there, we have this view of exercise that's kind of the most internal sort of function, tissue, internal tissue based intentional form of physical effort. And now we're moving to competition and labor, which are wholly externally based. You're not trying to get better at anything. You're not trying to have a good time necessarily. You are not, this is beyond low grade activity. And it's certainly what we train for, so to speak. Competition, in my physical view, is physical confrontation between two or more individuals or two or more teams of individuals within a particular rule set, and where that rule set is enforced to the greatest degree possible to maintain the assigned boundaries of the confrontation, that leverages all participants' available physical, cognitive, and other personal resources against those of their opponents for the sole purpose of attaining the status of winning the confrontation. The health and well-being of the participants is not a consideration within the confrontation at hand unless the participant is willing to concede a loss in the competition as a result of considering their health. The confrontation is affected by an event that occurs that is outside of the established rule set. So, like someone's fouled and is injured, or like in soccer, pretending to be injured when fouled. Kidding, soccer fans, kidding. Or in a team setting, the rule set allows for more able participants to be substituted for negatively affected participants. All right, so let's go through that just quickly here. So we've got a physical confrontation. That seems pretty easy between two or more individuals or two or more teams of individuals. Okay. Within a particular rule set, that's pretty easy there. That leverages everything that those players have: physical, cognitive, emotional, and all they're looking to do is get the win. That's the goal. We're in competition. We're trying to get the win. Now, in competition, when we'll talk about this, right? But like, can you learn stuff? Of course. Can you get closer with your teammates and form emotional bonds? Of course. Can you learn from the competition and get better at your chosen activity? So, in some sense, could competition be a more heightened form of training? Yeah, absolutely. The thing with competition is that the health and well-being of the participants is not a consideration within the confrontation at hand. All right. I have never seen a football game where a player is running down the field with the ball, attempting to score. And I'm borrowing this right from my buddy Tom Purvis. This is an example he gave. And at the 10-yard line, where, less than 3 seconds later, they're potentially, win the Super Bowl. Person stops and says, "Yeah, my hamstrings had enough. I feel like you might get a little strained from that last 10 yards." That's like 7 meters, I think, if you're in Canada. No one's ever done that. Why has no one ever done that? Because no one cares. Now, it might not have ever happened either, but the idea is that no one is going to concede a loss due to injury or the body being negatively affected unless it's abundantly necessary, unless they absolutely cannot continue. You may bring up the example of combat sports where the whole idea is that one of the ways to win, one of the more exciting and fan favorite ways to win, is to make the other person be so injured that they cannot continue. But also recall, this is often from a referee's interference. So it's not the person saying, "Yeah, I feel like I've been knocked out. Let's stop." Or "I feel like I've been hit too many times. Stop." That rarely, if ever, happens. All right. And other times that the event can stop is if the confrontation is affected by an event that occurs outside of the established rule set. So that could be anything from, a light foul of some sort to somebody's really hurt. And at which point, it's not so much that the person's hurt that the game has been stopped, but that the rule set has been broken. The rules have been broken. There are times in aggressive sports where someone is injured, but the rules haven't been broken yet. So play is still going, basically, until there's a reason within the rule set to stop. It's ruthless. That's competition. You also have situations where in a team setting, someone can be substituted. Now, the thing with this is you might say it's merciful. You might say if someone's really tired, they can be pulled out, or like in hockey, for example, I can't remember I'm not a hockey guy. So I think it was like every 90 seconds or 2 minutes at some regular interval and relatively short interval, fresh players are going on the ice. But this has nothing to do with the health of the players. Does it help to preserve the health of the players? Maybe. It's just the rules of the game. Shift change, subbing someone in. It's part of the game. It has nothing to do with the health of the individual. It has nothing to do with the person recovering so that they can be healthier afterwards. It has everything to do with players recovering so that they can go back in and be more ferocious when they're put back in because they've been able to recover, or someone has been injured because of the competition and they're getting pulled out. So this is pretty much as far away from exercise as you could possibly get. Now, I know this is like, yeah, thanks, Captain Obvious. We know competition is different from exercise. The challenge is, I know far too many people who are playing competitive pickup sports and calling it exercise. That is an abomination. And that sounds judgmental. And I don't mean to be judgmental of you as a person if you are someone who goes to play pickup sports. If you're going to play pickup sports because you like to compete and you like to have fun, whether or not you're good at the sport, you like playing, you like getting together with your friends and, dominating the competition, good on you. But if there's any part of your mind that says this is going to be healthy for me, it's exercise, it's going to long term benefit my physicality, you are just wrong. You are just wrong. And if you're telling me I'm wrong, I'm a full believer that you're believing in survivorship bias. It's not that it hasn't injured you, it just hasn't injured you yet. Competition is ferocious. Competition only takes the task or the win into consideration. It does not consider you. It is not a substitute for exercise. Period. The end. Now, that said, there are some great benefits to competition. One of them is that the resilience built in competition can transfer to resilience in other areas. So, again, like as I only have ever done jujitsu, okay, as like a sport type thing. And I've actually never competed, and I don't really plan on it because I don't want to get injured. And when you go to jujitsu tournaments, people are trying to hurt you because that is the nature of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And I accept that. I just do not really want to participate in it. I need my body to work at this point. I cannot afford to be severely injured from a local, you know, masters #2 purple belt competition. It's just not a thing I'm willing to participate in. However, the people that I do know that compete have told me that once they've gone through competition, all the hard stuff seems a lot easier. All the other hard stuff in their life seems a lot easier. So they get better at having difficult conversations. They get better at doing other stuff on the jiu-jitsu mat. They get better at confronting their coworkers in healthy ways to get issues resolved. So there's some good stuff that can happen there, overall confidence building. And then at the end of the day, really, like, if competition is important to you, then it can also be sort of a form of transcendence. And I'm going to get a little woo here, but if you're someone who's built a successfully, excuse me, if you're someone who has successfully built a certain physical skill set that can stand up to other people within the same rule set, maybe that helps you sort of evolve your identity into a person who can do that certain thing. And that might be really helpful to you. And if it has helped in that regard, that's awesome. Keep competing as long as the negative stuff doesn't happen to you. And, the big risk in competition of any sort, physical competition of any sort, is injury. So important. Here's a question for you. And this is how I think about my jiu-jitsu. Do you want to participate in the sport or other kind of competition that you love for as long as possible? Or do you want to win competitions? I give zero fucks, pardon my language, about winning competitions. I want to participate in jiu-jitsu for as long as I possibly can. I am 41 with a 2-year-old son and an 8-year-old daughter. And my 8-year-old is in jiu-jitsu. She loves it. My son will hopefully love jujitsu. Not that I need him to do that to love him, but it gives us something to do. I would love to be able to roll jujitsu with them when they are, 19, 20, 25, 30 years old. But that puts me in my 60s. I want to be able to do this with my kids in my 60s. Maybe I'll be able to teach it to kids one day because I think it's an excellent form of self-discipline and competition and understanding how to protect yourself, and lots of other useful things. So winning competitions and participating for as long as possible are not only not synonymous, okay, they're almost opposite to one another. So what's the deal? Do you want to participate in this thing for as long as you can, or do you want to win as much as possible? And if the answer is win, go ahead. Realize, though, winning may affect your participation longevity and your overall health and well-being and pain and all that sort of stuff. And, with that question said, did your competitive streak in whatever you're choosing to compete in, whether it's martial arts or basketball or hockey or even something like sort of exercise, just like CrossFit, like competitive CrossFit type stuff, did this all start as an effort to get healthy and improve your quality of life? Because if it did, How does injury sustained from competition play into that? And I'm not saying one little injury ruins everything. I'm nursing an injury right now. It's most likely from jujitsu. I don't regret a flipping thing, but I'm taking time off and I'm dealing with the injury. And I hate missing class and I hate not being able to exercise the way that I used to before. However, my body crossed the threshold and I'm dealing with it at this point. Such is life, right? How does injury play into your quality of life? So, in other words, are you willing to sustain the injuries that are more likely to occur in hard training and competition as part of your greater goal set? Or are they in contrast to that goal set? If you're in, moreover, if you're in a situation where you are being forced to compete by whoever is running the place where you're doing whatever your competitive thing is, whether it's your martial arts academy, or your basketball league, or you're like, what, are you being forced to compete? Are you being coerced into competing? Because if you are and you don't want to compete, get out of there. Leave the cult. You'll find somewhere else to do it that is actually concerned about your health and well-being, that doesn't take competition so seriously. Leave it for the competitors. If you're more interested in quality of life, walk away. Period. The end. All right. So that's my view on competition. I hope you did not hear that as Sam doesn't like competition. I absolutely think there are benefits to competition. I am not particularly interested in it at this point. If you are, please make sure that if you simultaneously have health and longevity related goals, and particularly if you have longevity related goals um, in the context of the activity in which you compete, try to reframe your competition. Maybe throw a little more healthy exercise in there, health producing exercise in there, and a little less hard training and a little less hard competing. And you'll be able to compete and participate, period, for that much longer. All right, let's move on to labor. So, labor, in my view, is physical effort or work that is usually hard and is aimed at deliberately foregoing comfort or undertaking discomfort deliberately in the present to create potential for greater comfort or security in the future, where the performance of the external task is the focus, and where avoidance of the task due to concerns for physical safety might have implications to future safety or security considerations, such as financial, housing, or food security. Now we're getting serious. Okay. I'm not talking about elective labor. I think gardening is great. I think it's wonderful. I think it produces beauty. And I applaud anyone who does it. I admire it. I know nothing about it. I know it's hard on your body too. It is vigorous effort. It's not what I'm talking about, unless you're getting paid to do it for someone else. I'm talking about the kind of labor that you have to do to maintain your home. I'm talking about the kind of labor that you have to do to maintain your family, okay, including being a stay-at-home parent, which is labor that I absolutely applaud, particularly with tiny, tiny screaming infants. All right. And I'm talking about the kind of labor that some people have to do in order to get a paycheck at the end of every couple of weeks or the end of every month or the end of every day, however you get paid. Wherein if you did not do that and you, for whatever reason, decided, I can't do this anymore, there would be potentially dire consequences that affect your well-being in a direct way, affect you financially, affect your housing, or affect your food security, or something else that is essential to your safety and survival, lower down on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so to speak. And it's easy to see at this point how labor and competition can differ so drastically from exercise. I'll continue with that. We'll come back to that though. That was sort of a misnomer point, to be honest. Forget I said it. When we're talking about labor, there are some benefits to labor. Okay. There are some benefits to harder physical labor, assuming that it doesn't injure you. And to be honest, even if it does injure you, there are still some benefits to it. So some participation in what I would call essential, like you can't live without it, physical labor is healthy on many levels. Again, when I say essential, I mean necessary for survival. Okay. It gives you a sense, labor for me in my house or labor, physical labor that I've had to do to earn money has always given me a sense of satisfaction that I was able to use my body to create sustenance for myself, and that I've been able to use my body to understand in even a microcosm of a way what it takes to actually get things done in this world. To understand that, I'm working right now in a gym. It's relatively speaking a fairly comfortable place. And yeah, I have to lift, aside from exercising, I have to lift heavy things from time to time, but I don't have to lift heavy things for 8 hours a day in order to feed my family. I get to use my mind a lot. I get to use my mouth a lot. I get to discuss things a lot. I don't have to haul heavy bricks from point A to point B from 7 in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And if you're privileged enough, as I am, to not have to labor to survive, then I do believe that the best benefit from it is in electively doing some physical labor. You can hopefully have some increased gratitude for what you have and the position that you've obtained or attained in life. The risks of labor, conflating labor with exercise, I think are significant, not only physically, but sort of socially too. And I'll never forget, there was this instance in high school. So for me, that's about 25 years ago. A bit about my background. My mother was born here, and my grandfather was a businessman. He was a post World War II Jewish immigrant, sort of hard ass businessman, but he was a businessman. He wasn't a physical guy, except when he needed to physically intimidate people in business. But love you, Papa Jack. Um, my dad's family immigrated to Canada from Italy in 1958. My dad was 7. My grandparents were hard laborers. They were absolutely hard laborers. My grandfather's hands were like rocks because for decades he hauled concrete blocks. And some of those concrete blocks probably weighed as much as he did. He wasn't a huge guy. He was 140, 150 pounds. And he would have to haul block that was the same load that he was in order to make minimal sustenance or appropriate sustenance for his family. I stand on the shoulders of giants when I think about my grandparents. All right. I'm not going to get too much into it here. Needless to say, I've been privileged to do things like open a gym because of the hard labor and sacrifice that they made. And I remember there was this instance in high school where it was coming to the end of the school year. I think it was grade 11, and this guy I was sort of friends with, I had started working out, and he was into working out too. And he comes up to me, and I still see him from time to time, and I think about this story every time. He comes up to me and he says, "Oh, dude, I'm so excited! I'm gonna get so ripped this summer." And you have to see it. If you're from North Toronto, it's a well-to-do area, and this guy is coming around in a rugby shirt and a backwards hat, which in the 90s was just the bee's knees of North Toronto style. And I said, "I'm gonna get so ripped," and I'm like, "Wow, cool, tell me more." And he's like, "Yeah, I got a landscaping job. Like I'm just gonna be like in the sun, like working my ass off, getting shredded the whole summer." So to this guy, based on his position of privilege, um, and I don't use that term lightly, and I don't use it as a current throwaway term of today. Based on his privilege, was seeing this manual labor as an opportunity to lose belly fat, to drink as much beer as he wanted over the summer, and have some fun, get a tan, probably flirt with some girls. And the thing is, he meant nothing by it. He meant nothing negative by it. He was genuinely excited about it. I have no judgment about the guy, but I have to say, at the time, and I held my tongue with it, I thought to myself, gee, I wonder if my grandfather thought he was going to get ripped when he was hauling block for 30 years. Now it's a false equivalency, right? It's a false equivalency. It's only to say that, in my view, if you have the opportunity to do elective manual labor, do me and hopefully do yourself 2 favors. One, like I said earlier, use it as a platform to be grateful that you don't have to do it out of necessity, to feed your family or feed yourself. And two, do not conflate it with exercise, because when we're talking about labor, one of the risks is, and I've said this earlier in this podcast, the task of labor, the task related to the particular labor you're carrying out, does not care whether it builds you or breaks you. If my grandfather said, I can't do this anymore, the foreman on the job site would have said, cool, to hell with you. I'll get the next guy who's willing to do it. That's a whole other discussion. The task needs to be done. Okay. The task needs to be done. It simply is, and it simply must get done. It is faceless and it does not care. And the other thing that I want you to keep in mind when we're talking about the risks of laborious tasks is that exertion and exhaustion do not necessarily equal better in terms of your health, in terms of your fitness, in terms of your body. Yes, in order to achieve certain levels of performance and certain levels of fitness for a particular task or a particular endeavor, a particular sport endeavor, you may need to push yourself. But you can also get into really great places of health without pushing yourself that hard and without risking your long-term health. And that, I think, is when we're talking about, just to sort of start to round things out here, it's easy to slip, especially in our hustle, hustle, go, 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 work, 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 grind, grind, grind society. And I'm speaking to myself here as much as I'm speaking to anyone who might be listening to this. It's easy to slip into treating all forms of physical effort like their labor and competition. It's very easy to slip to treat exercise, practice, and training, maybe even play, maybe even what you consider low level activity, into labor and competition, where the only goal is to go hard. And while that may be part of your individual goal set, it's important to see your efforts for what they ought to be beyond the macro goal, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. And by the way, one of the interesting things when we're looking at an internal performance, external performance view is everybody's goals are external performance based, right? So in no way would I ever, or have I ever, or am I ever trying to insinuate that internal performance, more exercisey stuff is superior to external performance based goals, even if I don't think they're particularly wise. That's me. All right. That's me. Everybody's goals are external performance based. When I see someone in my practice as an exercise professional who is in a lot of pain, they will always relate it to the things that they can't do, whether it's I can't play hockey anymore or I can't stand up by myself anymore. I had one lady a few years ago who wanted my help because she said that she couldn't stand up off the toilet and she was too vain to put a railing in her bathroom. She was in her late 70s. Put a railing in your bathroom. As far as I'm concerned, she didn't want one. She needed to be able to stand up. She didn't tell me that she needed her, gluteals and quadriceps to contract better so that she could, exert force into the ground through her feet via leg drive to extend the, ankles, knees, and hips simultaneously. No, she said she wanted to stand up. She talked about it in terms of external performance. So external performance is essential in terms of eyes on the prize. But beyond the macro goal, what's the goal of each individual effort that you make? Whether it's exercise, play, activity, practice, or training. What are you trying to do? Because if you're always going hard, you might be satisfying the little ego thing inside you that says, if I don't go hard, something bad's going to happen. No one's going to love me anymore, or whatever it might be that's actually going on in your head. But you're actually shortchanging yourself. Some focused exercise, some lighter practice, some easier going training can actually make your ability to do hard training, competition, labor better, because it's going to make your body better. It's going to create better outputs from your body, and it's going to create better focus from what your body can now do, avoid injuries, and produce better results when it comes to the external performance of these tasks. So taking a long-term view, when you're looking at any endeavor, no matter what you want to call it play, call it practice, call it exercise, call it competition, call it laboring. Do you want to win, go hard, go 100% at this one effort? Or do you want to work to participate and win in the greatest number of physical efforts as possible across a lifetime? I think that when we're looking at this across a lifetime thing, it requires us to be as objective as possible, whether it's an exercise professional looking in on someone who needs help accomplishing a certain goal, or whether it's you looking at the literal or metaphorical mirror, trying to decide what it is that you want to do with your body. What is it in you? These are some questions that I'm going to leave you with in some sense. What is it in you that if you're always going hard, 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 what is it that's pushing you so hard? What voice is it? And why do you feel so compelled to listen to it? Why do you feel so compelled to listen to it? And I had to face these questions myself. I continually have to face these questions myself because I'm a go, go, go kind of guy. In my experience, one of my issues is if I go, 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 go in an area that I enjoy, I'm kind of good at it, it distracts me from the hard stuff. So if I'm exercising literally 20 times a week, or if I'm training, exercising, practicing, training, all that stuff 20 times a week, and I'm not exaggerating there, that's a lot less time for the things I find hard, facing things that I need to change in order for my life outside of the physical realm to progress. Hard conversations in a variety of relationships, business tasks that scare the bejesus out of me to take things to the next level. Ultimately, though, that external performance goal is about helping as many people as I can. And that is why I put this series out there. And I hope that you found it helpful. And the thing that I would leave you with is that while this will never be perfect, that optimized levels of effort and optimized focus of effort into your physical being creates the greatest possibility of long-term success and participation and performance across as many realms as possible. So when you optimize your effort through both intention and degree of effort that you're using, degree of physicality, how hard are you actually going here? That's where you get the most wins. That's where you get the most wins. And again, it won't be perfect. I'm standing here injured right now because I couldn't see my own stuff. Luckily, I have people on my team here who've been willing to point it out to me. I hope somebody on our team here gets the chance to point it out to you, help you avoid injury, help you avoid missing out on the things that you love so much, keeping you healthy, keeping you on track, and helping you participate in the things you love the most with the people you love the most for as long as possible. Please leave comments. Please send me questions. I hope this has been helpful to you. Thank you so much for your open ear. Have a wonderful day.